Dudley.
Fast games, fast food. A foul ball, you want fries with that? Next inning, same fan. A pizza history. This week in baseball. Does anybody have any idea? Mel Allen, I miss him so much. Let's go around the horn. The music in This Week in Baseball, Mina, you're too young for this, but the opening song and the outro, I could start crying right now just hearing. Ding, 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 ding. Flashback to Tuesday when one panelist, a Woody Page, game planned the entire series for Portland, the team he doesn't cover, on how to beat the Nuggets, the team he does cover, the team his readers root for, and bam, Blazers 97, Nuggets 90. Woody, you're killing your readers. Jokic had one shot in the first quarter thanks to your brilliant analysis. Also points for the Iceman yesterday, saying C.J. McCollum would be the X factor. Woody, explain yourself and then explain this game, the game that has this series 1-1.
Well, I could run for mayor of Portland today. They
very
really
true, very true.
What my strategy was. So, I mean, I was trying to be objective, and what they did was they did play him straight up with Cantor and Collins. Mm-hmm. They did throw 5 or 6 other guys at him on occasions, but the Joker ended up with, they needed to go all Batman on him, and that's what they did. Right. In the first quarter, he only had 1 shot. He only had 6 points at halftime. He looked very passive to me. I don't know whether that was because of the defense or because he was trying to get everybody involved. He was pass first, shoot last kind of attitude. But I think even as important as that, the Nuggets with their shooting, 35% overall, but the 6 for 29 from the three-point range, you aren't going to beat anybody. The Trailblazers went much better with Lillard not playing.
All right, we've got a whole show with some other people who would like to talk, Woody. Speaking of, George Sedano's back with us, bringing a little class to the show with that pocket square. What did you see last night, Denver and Portland?
Well, I saw Portland was the key on a number of different levels, Tony. First of all, they're more than just a one-man team. I know a lot of people don't get to watch the Portland Trail Blazers, and Damian Lillard has proven to be a top 8 or 9 player in the NBA. But C.J. McCollum's pretty darn good, too. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Plus, they got great impact yesterday off the bench. Rodney Hood may have had his best playoff game of his career. And, of course, Cantor provided a lot of impact as well as far as the big men were concerned. But the reality is this, Portland got a little lucky there because they gave up a ton of offensive rebounds, and there were a lot of easy bunnies that the Denver Nuggets missed in that particular game.
Frank Isola.
The number of the day, Tony, is 14. 14 offensive rebounds Denver had in the fourth quarter alone and didn't win. 14 is how many points Damian Lillard scored on the road, and somehow Portland was able to get a victory out of it. And I'm starting to wonder about Nikola Jokic. He's been playing now every other day for about a week. And by the way, Game 3 is going to be tomorrow night, so they don't get any rest in this series. He averaged 31 minutes a night during the season. He's up to about 38. I wonder if he's showing fatigue. And George was right about Rodney Hood. LeBron must be sitting there saying, Rodney Hood, where was this when you were on
George
Cleveland?
Is right about Rodney Hood. George, you said this might be Rodney Hood's best postseason game ever. Like, what do you have, a Tumblr dedicated to Rodney Hood postseason games? Mina Kimes, what did you see last night, Portland and Denver?
I was very impressed by how Portland handled Jokic because after game 1,
Woody said it.
I thought they were cooked. You know, this would be the moment where not having Nurkic would come to haunt them against a playmaking big. I thought Collins and Cantor weren't enough. They come out in game 2 and completely proved me wrong. They actually threw 7 defenders at him, but Cantor impressed me the most, held Jokic to 1 for 6 from the half court. Cantor was great at the other end of the court as well. He finished with +6 rating. Now, the other stuff in the game, you know, Dame time turning into lame time, the Nuggets going ice cold, that's not going to happen again. But Jokic is going to continue to be a threat throughout the series, and if they can handle him, I think they can stay.
Woody, let's dig deeper here on Jokic, because you've covered him all year, and you said he was passive last night. That's happened at other points in this season, hasn't it? Because the ball is in his hands so much. He's that passive passing center. So what does he need to do in the upcoming 5 games?
He needs to work a little bit more outside. We're seeing him too deep, and they were forcing him into the middle. And as a result of that, he can't be as effective as a passer, and he can't really go to the basket. He's an outstanding three-point shooter, but he's got to be out around the top of the key to actually work as a point center, which is what he is. But I think this series is going to go down to 6-7 games, really, because these teams are evenly balanced. But Portland has problems in Denver because of the altitude. If you notice, the Nuggets almost got get back into that game because Portland did tire out last night.
The altitude, yes. They're not the only ones playing at altitude, but okay. Frank, do you have a feel for who's the better team right now?
I think it's going to be Portland, especially going home. And Mina mentioned Enes Kanter, and I thought he did a really good job being physical. I mean, poor Torrey Craig took that shot late in the game after having his nose all busted up. And remember, too, Jamal Murray's been carrying that right thigh injury. He came back late in the fourth quarter. He was not himself. He was really struggling.
George, you have a feel for who's the better team right now?
It's the Blazers. Damian Lillard had the worst game he's had in the postseason right now, and they still survived that on the road. That's a big win for Portland.
Going to home court and going to Portland next. We'll move on. Raptors-Sixers, Game 3 tonight. The key to tonight's game, George, a pivotal Game 3, as you people like to say.
I'm going to go a little outside the box here, Tony, because I've spoken to Nick Nurse about this in the past. Their offense is a completely different offense since they've added Marc Gasol. Marc Gasol is really the engine for them. He moves the ball around. He finds guys cutting to the basket. They get 4 or 5 baskets at the rim each and every night, just guys cutting off Marc Gasol passes. Marc Gasol did not have a great game in the last game, and I think he's the X factor in this entire series when it comes to Toronto's offense.
Frank, you're going to double down. You were right with C.J. McCollum as the X factor last night. Who's the X factor tonight? The key to tonight's Game 3.
Yep. I'm going to have to double down with what George said. I actually spoke with Brett Brown, who, as we know, has the greatest New England accent of all time since the movie The Departed.
So you guys do your job. I'm so proud of you.
Embiid has been struggling against Marc Gasol, so that is a factor. And I love the way Jimmy Butler played. And I think Jimmy Butler in the last series against the Brooklyn Nets was more of a role player. I think now, especially with Kawhi Leonard out there, they need more from Jimmy Butler. I love the way he played in Game 2. He'll be the biggest factor going into Game 3.
Well, Mina Kimes, have you talked to anybody that you can share information and analyze this game?
Neither coach, but I did talk to Jackie Mack yesterday in LA and got some insights from her.
We would have Jackie on the show if we wanted Jackie's insights.
Yeah, okay. Well, I actually think the X factor is Nick Nurse. Look, Toronto in a game where they were out rebounded, dismal shooting, I think 36% from the field, turned the ball over a ton. They still almost won because they're the better team. The difference was the adjustments that the Sixers made going into last game had them shook. Brett Brown, to his credit, made a lot of smart moves, putting Simmons on Kawhi, Embiid on Siakam, which really worked. Tobias Harris was on Gasol. I think the Raptors are going to have to make some adjustments in response. Like George, I'd love to see Gasol take the keys because I think he has the best matchups. He might have to be more of a playmaker if Kawhi's limited in any way, and he is a good defender on
Woody
Embiid.
Page, key to tonight?
Yeah, all of you have missed the real X factors in this game, but I was talking to my neighbor who's from Canada, and I told him the same thing I'm going to tell you. It's the bench of the Raptors. They have a much better bench. Philadelphia's biggest problem is they really don't have guys coming off the bench that help them. So what did we have in the last game? Van Vliet and Ibaka and
you're right there,
Powell,
Woody.
and all three of them, they did nothing. And when you add Danny Green going 1 for 8, they're going to be the X factors because if they can get back to scoring the way they have throughout the previous playoffs and the regular season, Toronto will be fine. If not,
all right,
if they're
Woody.
the same as last game.
Although you are a panelist who tells me every time, the bench plays better at home, they would be having to do that on the road this time around. You got to pick tonight, George Sedano?
I do. I think the Raptors are going to win. I think the Raptors are going to win this series in 6. They're just the better team. They're a more cohesive unit. Embiid's been dinged up. This is not good for the
Isola
Sixers
tonight?
Why are we worried about the Sixers bench when they have a great starting 5? The Sixers will win Game 3 tonight.
Mina Kimes?
I think Toronto's going to win this, and I think they're going to win this
Woody
series.
Page?
Philly.
We'll move on. Now a story about Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving joining a New York-based team. Look at Frank Isola right there.
Wow, here we go.
He wants a cigarette. Jared Dudley told Mark Stein, New York Times, he'd be shocked if the Nets don't get a meeting with Durant or Irving. Frank, take a moment, compose yourself, and now tell me what you got.
Shocked, I'll tell you. Well, it's not about just getting a meeting and getting your foot in the door. It's about landing one or both of those players. It's been out there for a while about Kyrie Irving. In fact, David Griffin has said before when he was working in the media that if Kyrie Irving were to leave Boston, he could see him going to Brooklyn. So, yes, I think they can get a meeting. Whether or not they can land him, it's the same thing with the Clippers. The Clippers have put themselves, they've done things the right way. Same thing with the Brooklyn Nets. But those other teams that in the towns that they share have more history. That's why both of them seem to have an edge.
So if you'd handicap this, where is Brooklyn falling in this sweepstakes for the offseason? Are they a top 2 team destination-wise for either of these guys or further down the list?
I think for Kyrie they would be. I'm not so sure for Kevin.
George, you want to answer that question? Can you handicap? Is Brooklyn in the running here?
I mean, I think Brooklyn's in the running for Kyrie to some extent. He grew up a Nets fan, from my understanding. He grew up a Jersey kid, so I think that there's some allure there. I just think the reality is this, that if the Nets are to try to get these two guys, they're going to have to lose out on D'Angelo Russell. So then all of a sudden you're left with, Jared Allen's a good player. Karis LeVert, he's kind of the Swiss Army knife, a nice player. But that's not an overwhelming roster around those particular guys. A nice roster, guys who know their roles. And look, give the Nets a lot of credit. They've been able to dig themselves out of a hole that really no one thought they would after the Billy King fiasco and the trade for KG and Paul Pierce and those guys. But yeah, I still think at the end of the day, they play second fiddle to the Knicks in that town, much like the Clippers do with the Lakers.
I'm sensing some pause, though, there, that you wouldn't trade off D'Angelo Russell with bringing Kyrie Irving in, and that surprises me a little bit, just a little bit. Woody Page, how about you?
George, did you talk to Nick or any other nurses about what you just provided us there? That wasn't very much. Of course they're in the hunt. If you are going to go to New York and think about the New York Knicks, you've got to go visit the Nets and see that they have a much better arena. They have a much better fan base. They don't have the ownership that the Knicks do. Sure. They have actual young players who can surround them and help them get even better and be in the. I mean, they were a 4-5 seed this year. They could be like a second or third seed next year. I think the Knicks are going to always be a non-playoff
They were a 6
team,
seed.
really,
it's
when
okay.
you think
I know.
about it.
I was going to correct him too, but thank you for doing it, George. Hey, you're just throwing out numbers here. I see how you do it. Paint by numbers with Woody Page. And Mina Kimes, Brooklyn's chances here, getting meetings and then landing Durant and Irving.
Well, I think there should and will. All of the free agents should absolutely consider Brooklyn. They're kind of like the Clippers East in that they're a well-constructed, well-managed team with a great young core, although George is right, they'd have to part ways with Russell if they wanted to open 2 slots. They've got draft picks. They absolutely should consider them. But if there's anything I learned about the NBA from free agency over the last few years, it's we have no idea what motivates these guys to go anywhere. So will they consider Brooklyn is an open question. Kawhi, I have no idea. Kyrie. Now, Durant is close friends with Karis LeVert, so maybe that'll give them a little bit of an edge, but who knows?
I stole the last word.
Well, Mina's got great sources because she's right about the Karis LeVert connection. And both of them had the same foot surgery right around the same time from the same doctor in New York. That has something to do with their relationship as well. Good job, Mina.
Okay, I appreciate the information. I'm not sure that's exactly news I can use, but I'll give you guys a point for your efforts. One thing that strikes me here, Brooklyn and Los Angeles, very similar situations for the Clippers and for the Nets. You guys just said that. They're in a city with maybe a larger team, and they're also a team that made a run to get to the playoffs this year that many didn't expect. We'll be back. Buy or sell next.
Around the Horn is presented by Hornitos Tequila. A shot to Around the Horn presented by Hornitos. Part of Happy Hour.
Waving to opposing fans after the win last night. Cincinnati's Jesse Winker of the New York. Okay, was this a good troll or a bad troll? Well, let's see what happened this afternoon. He gets tossed for arguing a strike, and he gets the waves right back in his face. Mets won this game 1-0, by the way, on a Noah Syndergaard home run. 8th time in baseball history a pitcher homered in his 1-0 shutout. Mina, what to buy, what to sell?
I am buying the historical nature of this, because you're right, it's the 8th time since 1908, which means we got some great old-timey baseball names in there. We got Red Ruffing. I'm trying to do your Mel Allen voice. We got Spud Chandler. We got Earl Wynn. Noah now enters the annals of baseball history. It's an amazing achievement.
Woody Page?
I tried.
I'm buying the other historic event yesterday, and that was after he Winker waving last night, then the Mets fans got into it again today, waving back. How many times has that ever happened back-to-back games in Major League Baseball? None.
Okay.
I think it's
right. I don't think anybody's ranking the waves in Major League Baseball history. George Sedano, how about you?
I'm buying Winker versus the Mets fans, much like Woody, but for a different reason. We've had a lot of bad fan-player interactions this season. You know what? This is the show of competitive banter. Well, this is a show of good-natured ribbing on both sides. So I'm going with Winker. But by the way, the Mets ops guys, the stadium ops guys, should have gone with Hey Nana Hey Hey by Steam on his way out. That was a dropping of the ball there.
Frank Isola?
Last pitcher to do it with Bob Welch of the Dodgers of 36 years ago. By the way, Syndergaard shaved his beard, hit the home run, 1-0 shutout complete game. He said he's never pitching again with a beard. I don't believe it.
Mina Kimes, what do I have to do to get you to use old-timey voice for the rest of the show? Your dreams can come true point-wise if you do. Let's move on. Pirates sell 2, Hurricanes 5, Islanders 2, which makes the series Carolina 3 and New York 0. Bunch of jerks are on fire right now, no matter who's in goal. Curtis McElhinney, 35 years old, first career playoff start, oldest in NHL history, and of course he was a brick wall last night. Woody, Kane's that good or Islanders that flustered right now?
The Islanders are that bad. They've scored 3 goals in total in 3 games. After you beat the Penguins, I mean, are you satisfied with that? You come out, you're playing against a team that's got 6 guys hurt, and they put an old goaltender in there, and you can't do anything to win a game in this series? No, Islanders. Awful.
Georgie?
Listen, Tony, this is all about those jerks from Carolina, okay? Because you know what? An 18-year-old George Sedano remembers the 1996 Stanley Cup playoffs, where a ragtag group from Florida got all the way to the Stanley Cup final, knocking off Mario Lemieux, knocking off Eric Lindros, and then falling to Woody's Avs in the Stanley Cup finals. But the reality is this. It's about camaraderie this time of year, and Carolina's showing it.
History lesson from George Sedano there. Frank Isola, how about you?
How about the fact they're 7-1 in their last 8 playoff games? To me, though, they're jerks, but they're old jerks. Justin Williams, who scored the game-winning goal, 37 years old, and the goaltender last night, he's going to be 36 in 2 weeks. So they're getting it done with older players.
I'd say mostly Carolina, a little bit of New York messing up. The turning point of the game, I thought, was when Justin Falk came out of the penalty box. And as a football writer, this almost reminded me of a Hail Mary because he gets the lob, bats it down, bangs it in. That's a lot on him, great execution, but it's a little bit of New York kind of keeping their eye off the puck and messing up.
Justin Falk, not a name you want to do in a certain voice, Mina?
Justin Falk really came through.
There it is. We'll move on. Buy or sell 3 for 2 years. The FBI used every investigative technique at its disposal to dig into corruption in college basketball. And the biggest fish they caught were Christian Dawkins, Jim Gatto, and Book Richardson. Maybe the sport is actually cleaner than we thought. That was Seth Davis. George, buy or sell that?
I'm buying Seth Davis because here's the reality of it. Everybody feels that, there's going to be these Brinks trucks for these kids. But you know what? These kids come from underprivileged backgrounds, and $10,000 goes a long way for any of these type of families. So, you know what? I think it was actually a bargain considering how much money we think tends to go in these situations. Bad job by Sean, though. You got a bargain and didn't capitalize.
Isola, how about you?
Well, that's exactly the point, though. He's saying, like, they didn't find anything. They found out that DeAndre Ayton was getting $10,000 a month. I think a lot of players are getting paid in college basketball. It's just that we hear it so often now, it's not really that big of a deal anymore.
You think that's what it is? Mina Kimes, that we have gotten to a point where players getting paid is not a big deal because we expect it and some think they should?
Yeah, I'm buying that. It's hilarious that a tape comes out of an assistant coach in a major program is on tape saying a player was paid off, and nobody really cared. And that's part because I think everyone's so inured to this. We all believe that they're getting paid, and it's also because I think there's an emerging consensus that these guys deserve to get paid.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Mina is everybody thinks they should get paid, so why make a big deal out of what's going on? I've talked to enough coaches over the last 30 years to know that it's not as clean as this indicates. I mean, so many schools are paying so many players in some sort of term, either flights or coach.
Well, we pay panelists here by the point, and Woody Page, well, maybe,
strong letter to ESPN.
Okay, that's it for Page, that's it for Isola. Mina Kimes, George Sedano in Showdown, brought to you by McGillicuddy's Magical Elixir. Kiss your halitosis goodbye and your wife good morning. Did that work?
Just tequila, a shot worth taking. Part of Happy Hour.
Stars 4, Blues 2. Series is tied at 2 apiece. Blues goalie rookie Jordan Binnington, ice killer since he called up. He gave us the "Do I Look Nervous" earlier this postseason. Well, at the end of the second yesterday, jabbed by Jamie Benn, retaliated, both got penalties, and on his way off the ice, goalie-on-goalie crime, Binnington getting in it with Ben Bishop. Do you think this would be a good thing or a bad thing for your rookie netminder? Mina, first to you.
So Binnington is 25, and he was called up in January, which is amazing. His thing is being chill. Now we've got a crack in the ice a little bit. I'd only be concerned if it happens again with him.
I mean, his nickname is the Flatliner. For that to happen, Reale, you undersold it. Ben hit him in the crotch. All right? Anybody's going to react to that. I'm with Binnington on this one.
All right. Point to Sedano. We'll move on. Showdown 2. The fan who lost their fries in a foul ball next inning lost pizza, got a foul ball. 2 meals, just 1 ball. Good payoff, George?
Absolutely. He got on every television show in America, including this show. It's worth it for him.
Normally, I'm always team food above everything, but having had the pizza at Dodger Stadium, I love the Dodger dogs, but I think he may have made the right decision there.
All right, well.
But it was at Giants Stadium.
Yeah, you got that one wrong, Mina, and that's going to be a
Oh, no.
FaceTime George Sedano. There you go, Georgie.
Probably the pizza's not good there either.
Thank you, Tony. I wanted to just extend my condolences to the Reyes family. One of my childhood friends, literally my neighbor growing up since the age of 6, Frank Reyes, passed away this week suddenly of a heart attack. I have so many great memories of him, like playing wiffle ball in the front yard as kids, hitting over our fences, playing football in the streets, like all that stuff, man. Just great stuff, great memories, and may he rest in peace. I love you, brother.
Thanks for sharing, George. Sorry for your loss and the Reyes family's loss. We'll be back tomorrow, 23.5-hour break.